Here were the projections from 2021 for the SEC West. You can see the projected record, and then on the right, the actual record. And every team in the SEC West was within 2 games. Our projections from last year, all within 2 games. Some of my predictions were a little bit better than the projections. Some of them might have been worse, but Alabama was projected to go 11-1. They did go 11-1. Texas A&M was projected to go 9-3. You have to wonder if Haynes King had not gotten injured, could this team maybe at least have gotten to 9-3, but they were 8-4. LSU was projected to go 8-4. They underperformed 6-6. They also had a lot of injuries, so again, a healthy team, maybe they get to 8-4. Ole Miss really had a great year. They were 10-2, and they were only projected to go 8-4. So a really strong year for the Rebels. They were a bit of a surprise last season. I thought they had it in them. I thought that this team had potential to be a top 10 team. I think I predicted them to go 9-3 or 10-2. I can't remember for sure. Auburn, they were 6-6. Their projection was 7-5. I do know that I did pick them to go 6-6. Arkansas projected to go 6-6. They were 8-4, so they were better than their projection. Mississippi State 6-6. They were actually 7-5. So all of these within 2 games. Biggest overperformer would have been Ole Miss, well, and Arkansas. Ole Miss and Arkansas better than expected. And then LSU was the one team that was 2 games under where they were expected to be. So let's take a look at the projected standings here in the SEC West. Now keep in mind, we're going to show you an overall record and a conference record, but all of our projections are done based off of the full 12 games. I just kind of gave a rough estimate of what the conference records could potentially be, and I maybe moved some up and down to where we got the wins and losses all the same in the SEC. It's a total, I think, of 56 games. 56 wins, 56 losses. And so keep in mind that don't read too much into the conference records. This is really to get the overall record. And it could even add up to where, we could have 2 teams from different conferences that both wind up going undefeated in the non-conference based on the projection, even though that obviously couldn't happen, but it's simply how the math has to work. So we're just really focusing here on the overall record. So let's start at the bottom. Mississippi State going 6-6 overall, just 2-6 in the SEC. Again, that they could be 6-6, and maybe they lose a non-conference game, which I don't think they play anyone that should beat them. But I was surprised, honestly, that Mississippi State was down at 6-6. They do have to play Georgia and Kentucky, maybe the top 2 teams out of the East. So I don't think Mississippi State is the worst team in this division. But because of their schedule, they might wind up at the bottom. It'll be interesting to see. We had Auburn just ahead of them. They were also projected to go 6-6. It did work out for them to go 3-5, meaning they would lose a non-conference game to Penn State. But let's say they beat Penn State, and then maybe they go 2-6. And then they'd be tied with Mississippi State at 6-6 overall. So that's why I say focus on the overall record. But Auburn and Mississippi State down here at the bottom, just ahead of Auburn. And we had, this is really kind of how I think the West is going to go. I think Alabama is going to be kind of clearly above everyone else. I know some people will disagree with not only Alabama, but maybe some of the other teams that they think that maybe they can challenge Alabama. I don't see it happening. But again, these projections I think do reflect close to what I think the standings will look like. Maybe not exactly, but we had a kind of a logjam here with these next few teams. LSU also projected to go 7-5, 4-4, so 500 in the SEC, 7-5 overall. And again, we've got some ties here. Arkansas 7-5, 4-4 in the conference. So for the tiebreakers, again, we're looking at the overall record. That's how I determine the order here. If there was a tie, I really just went to who had home field advantage in the head-to-head matchup. So I believe Arkansas has home field advantage over LSU. But I mean, it's really a tie. We don't, there's really no separation there. Both teams 7-5, 4-4 in the conference. Arkansas has a tricky non-conference schedule, by the way. I don't know that they lose a non-conference game, but again, to make the projections work, they did have to. That's how it had to come out. So 7-5 for Arkansas, 7-5 for LSU. Then we move up to Ole Miss, who's actually projected to go 8-4. A lot of this does have to do with their schedule. They have a much more favorable schedule than Arkansas. Arkansas, like I said, has a tricky schedule. Ole Miss has a pretty good non-conference schedule, and of course they get to play Vanderbilt out of the West, or out of the East, I should say. So yeah, Ole Miss sitting there at 8-4. Looks like another good year for them based off of these projections. Texas A&M projected to go 9-3. So Texas A&M just ahead of Ole Miss, 5-3 in the conference. They would be that number 2 team. So we'd have of course Alabama, who I'll show, and then we'll have Texas A&M, but a very close race in the SEC West if it plays out like this. 1 or 2 games could definitely swing things as far as who's going to be number 2, 3, 4 in this division. But Alabama is projected to win the conference by 2 games. They are projected to go 11-1, 7-1 in the conference. I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler for my predictions. I don't have Alabama losing a regular season game. I don't see anyone beating them. There are some tricky games on the schedule, though. I mean, even Texas, you never know. The SEC West can be really good. So I think the odds would tell you that, yes, Alabama is probably going to trip up somewhere, but it's still a good chance they go undefeated. 11-1 the projection for them. If we look back to last year, every game in the West, every team was within 2 games. So, you could look at that and say best case scenario for Texas A&M is 11-1, worst is 7-5. Ole Miss 10-2, 6-6. You could kind of go down through the list, and I think that would be. I don't think any team here is going to be. I don't think the record's going to be more than 2 games different. I don't really see. Alabama's obviously not going to go 9-3. Texas A&M's not going to do worse than 7-5, and they're not going to go 12-0. Ole Miss, I don't think it's going to go worse than 6-6. Not going to be better than 10-2. Arkansas and LSU are interesting. If a team is going to beat this, I think you could see Arkansas or LSU maybe go 10-2 and be 3 games better than the projection. But I don't know. That's going to be tough with their schedules. And then Auburn and Mississippi State there at 6-6. Maybe one of them could get to 8-4. But again, we're playing the averages here, and this is the projection for the SEC West. Alabama on top, and then a very close race after that. Give me your thoughts here on the SEC West down in the comments below.